So I had these seats from the old Boston Garden, and I started, building my little man town out here in the garage. And realized as they was sitting up against the wall that while they stood up by themselves, they weren't really stable, and for the most part, I wouldn't really encourage a lot of folks to sit in them. So what did I decide to do? Well, I decided to I would mount them onto a platform. So what you can see here, I'm going to actually pause and take the seats down, so hold on a moment. So we're working on a platform, or a mount if you will, for my Boston Garden seats. And as you can see, I've got this kind of, plain board that I'm going to mount the seats into. You will notice that I've got some pretty cool old wooden hockey sticks framing the entire thing. And as you look at eye level, you'll see there's a little bit of a lip. And there's a reason that I've done that. What I plan to do is, and I'm going to actually walk over here for a moment, I've collected a bunch of my old hockey cards and ticket stubs and such. They're actually in this little bag. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use a product to encase the cards into the platform, and then I'm going to mount the Boston Garden seats to the platform. So the product I'm planning to use, it is an epoxy. It's called Glaze Coat. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to apply all the cards and ticket stubs to the mount. I'm going to seal them up, and then I'm going to actually bolt those seats right to the mount, and then we'll have a very stable platform. People can enjoy the seats again, and these Boston Garden seats will be back in business since they haven't been used since 1995. So we'll show more as I get into the epoxy process, but for now, that's it. So I've been showing clips about a new base I'm building for my Boston Garden seats, and I mentioned that I was going to use some epoxy and encase some of my old hockey cards and ticket stubs. So what I'm going to be doing is I've cleaned the base. You can see it's pretty solid right now and pretty clean. The holes that you see drilled in it, maybe it's hard to see with the lighting, I've already pre-drilled holes for the garden seats. Now, since I'm using an epoxy base to kind of create a solid layer over the cards, I've had to fill those holes in with silicone so that the epoxy doesn't just drip down those holes. And what I'll do is when I'm done, I'll drill from the back and come through slowly and take the hole right back through the, hopefully, right back through the epoxy covering, and then mount the seats. But for today, what we're going to do, because you can't just lay the hockey cards and ticket stubs on the platform and then pour the epoxy base because they'll float and kind of get curled and crinkled. What we're going to do is actually use this product here. It's called Mod Podge. I've actually have not used it yet. I've just been doing some of my research. We're going to use this to actually affix the cards to the base before I pour the epoxy. And apparently what we do is we use this, coat the back of the cards, coat the base, put the cards in, and then basically coat over the cards. And as this Mod Podge dries, it dries in a clear gloss state. So then the cards will be affixed to the base with a nice clear glossy coating and ready for the epoxy. So that's going to be my next step. I can't hold the video and do this project at the same time. So what I'll do is I'll show a picture, or we'll do a little quick video after the project. Talk to you soon. So I figured I'd do a quick shot as I start to do the Mod Podge portion. And you'll see I started to encase the ticket stubs in the cards right onto the board with the Mod Podge. And you'll notice that they are drying clear. So these are some of the latter ones I did, and the glue is over the top and holding the edges down. But you'll see these are some of the earlier ones I did, and how the pictures are now starting to get pretty clear. So product seems to be working great. I'm going to keep going. I've got a lot of cards and ticket stubs to go. So we'll check back in when I'm done. So I finished the the cards in the Mod Podge project. You can see it's the Mod Podge glue itself is still drying in many cases, but I am really impressed with the product. It definitely encases the cards right on the mount, and we'll be waiting for these to dry and cure. And once the temperatures outside get into the mid-70s, we had a cold spell, so I'm not going to be able to pour the epoxy until it warms up a little bit outside. So these are going to need a day or two to cure anyway, and then we'll finish the epoxy project, and then I'll get the seats mounted back on. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys are enjoying this and maybe getting some ideas for a project of your own. You'll see some of my heroes from my childhood: Aurora, Gilbert, Schmidt, Johnny Pearson, Norman Levier, Pete Peters, Rick Middleton, Bork, Espo, Busick, Chief, Park, Johnny McKenzie, Reggie Lumlin, Andy Moog, Don Cherry, and so many others. It's really pretty cool to actually take some of your childhood and encase them in a memory like this. So really looking forward to getting this finished. And until next time, cheers. So it's finally here. It's pour day, and it's not pour a beer day, it's pour the epoxy coat onto the base for the Boston Garden seats. So when we last spoke, you saw the little bit of a hiccup I had with the Mod Podge product, leaving a lot of white residue on the base. So basically I tried to remove some of it. I did not have a lot of luck, so I had to actually lose a day and take some black gloss paint and basically paint in between each and every one of these cards. So I have gotten rid of most of the residue from the Mod Podge. You know, lesson learned: always practice on something not your major project. You've probably heard that before. But what's also interesting is, while I'm telling you this very thing, this will be the first time I've ever poured epoxy. So had to wait for the weather to warm up outside. It is a nice sunny day out, and it is plenty warm. So we're going to be in that ambient temperature, mid-70s inside the garage, which works perfectly. I have cleaned the surface, so I've got all the pollen off, no dust, no residue from the Mod Podge, and we're ready to go. So a couple key things. You'll see I've got the level here. That's just verifying that the base itself is completely level across, and that's really important so that the epoxy settles nice and evenly. We've confirmed everything is level. That's great. Next up, we do have the epoxy. Now, this stuff's not cheap. This small little box cost me $30, I think. I do believe that this will give me a thick enough coat on the base, and if for some reason it doesn't, I run to the store and get another box, which will be another 30 bucks. So we'll try one. We'll see how it goes. My understanding is that you do have a little bit of play time. If it's not quite enough, I'll have plenty of time to run to the store and get another one. So the mixing process, since I can't hold the actual product and the video camera and do all of that at the same time, we'll just talk through the steps, and then maybe I'll do another quick video clip. So the product is a 1-to-1 mix. So for this project, I'm going to use all of the contents of the box, and that'll be pour one into the big bucket, pour the second one right behind it, and then stirring slowly, I will mix the two products together to form the hardening epoxy. And we have a play time. I believe I've got about 30 minutes play time. I will shoot for less than that. Before I actually start, I'll reread the directions because I haven't read them again since I bought the product. I want to make sure I at least get that done right. And then what we'll do is we'll go through the actual pouring process and then let it cure. And while it's curing, I've actually got a couple boards, and I'm going to have a drop cloth to put over the actual base so that the pollen that's in the air doesn't actually get on to the product before the epoxy has a chance to freeze up and harden. So I am going to start reading some epoxy directions. And just note that every brand of epoxy might be a little bit different, so you'll always want to read the specific directions for the product that you buy. And so I'm going to read those directions. I'm going to get mixing. One important piece to mention: each brand of epoxy, they ask you to go through a mixing process, and the mixing process can differ in the length of time they ask you to mix the product, as well as the play time you have before the product starts to cure. So that'll be important to note. I'll take a minute, I'll read those directions, I'll come back to you, I'll tell you what we're going to do, and then I'm actually going to go ahead and start doing the mixing process. Talk to you soon. Just a quick update. I did have to actually go to the store and get more of the glaze coat. 1 quart, although while it would cover the entire base, would be a really thin layer, and that's not what I was looking for. So I did have to go grab another coat. So now we're $60 of epoxy into the project and a little bit bigger bucket. And the process will be to actually pour these guys into the bucket and start stirring. And I've got to do the mixture for 6 minutes, move them into another bucket, and then another 6 minutes. So very important that we follow those directions. I will be putting on some rubber gloves, and you'll notice I have a heat gun. The purpose of the heat gun is once you spread the base layer of epoxy over the project, you need to run a heat gun over the actual epoxy to bring air bubbles out. So the process will be mix the epoxy and get the final product in the pour bucket, and then I will be pouring that across the project and then running the heat gun over it. And so the next time we see this, it will be the final project. After I am done with the heat gun, I will be placing a couple boards and a clean cloth over the actual base to keep pollen and dust off for the next 8 hours, which is the time it takes for it to cure. And so when we see this tomorrow morning, we should have a final base product that I'll be able to mount the actual seats to. So exciting time. I'm going to pause this for now, and we'll come back when we're done with the pour. So I have finished putting down the pour coat of epoxy. Things look good. I just finished using the heat gun to blow the air bubbles out. So you can see that there's no bubbles in the glass surface, what appears to be almost a glass surface right now. So it looks really good. I'm really excited about this project. And so now we've got to let this stuff cure before I can actually re-drill those 6 holes and get the seats mounted. So I'm going to cover this up, keep the dust and pollen out overnight, and we'll check on it again in the morning. But you can see the epoxy really looks pretty good. So the product that I used, I actually had to stir for 6 minutes, pour it into a different container, and then stirred for another 6 minutes before we actually used it. Then I put it down, used a soft sponge brush, if you will, to kind of spread it out evenly, and then the heat gun to take the air bubbles out. So now it's pretty crystal clear. I'm really happy with it, and we're going to let this cure, and we'll get back at this tomorrow. So the epoxy is cured, and I have to say it actually looks quite awesome. You can see the cards are now all encased in a layer of epoxy, crystal clear. The cards, the color just pops out now, and I'm pretty excited. For a first time, I feel like this came out really pretty cool. As I mentioned, this isn't the final product. Next steps will be to take the actual Boston Garden seats and mount them to the base, but the actual epoxy piece itself, you can see the cards are just crystal clear in there, and wow, I'm really happy with this. Enjoyed the project. From an expense point of view, it wasn't terrible. The half a gallon, which it came to, of epoxy ended up costing $60. So that was the main expense. I've got some hockey sticks here I had collected, and a good friend of mine, Dan, gave me a few as well. So The expense component of this is really tied up in the epoxy and obviously the cards and the stubs, but those are the fun part, right? So those don't really count. Next up, I will mount the seats and we'll walk through that process. So we've been watching the Boston Garden seat project. I actually just drilled the 6 holes and actually mounted the seats to the platform. It looks fantastic. I'm super excited. That piece of the project went really smoothly, which was nice. And we are done. So now I just need to get it into its final resting spot, and we will have 2 Boston Garden seats mounted on an incredible base. Thank you for watching.